When it comes to ayahuasca, there is something that commonly happens, but not so many people are talking about, probably because it has the potential there to freak a lot of people out. And of course, what I'm referring to here is dying. You can actually die whilst on plant medicine. And in this video, what I want to be talking about is the reasons as to why you might die on ayahuasca. I want to try to put some thoughts to rest in case you've possibly heard of this happening already and it's maybe worrying you. It's probably deciding for you as to whether or not you should take ayahuasca, And I also want to mention why you might end up dying on ayahuasca. Okay? So, the first time I ended up dying on ayahuasca was actually around about 3 years ago. I attended a retreat in Costa Rica called Rhythmia Life Advancement Center. And I was there on a media trade. And a media trade is simply, I provide my services and in return, I get to stay at the retreat for free. And so the cool thing was that I got to make videos there whilst at Rhythmia explaining the whole process from start to finish. And so if you've been subscribed for a while on my YouTube channel, you've probably seen already the Rhythmia series where I basically vlogged 4 whole days mentioning my 4 ceremonies. Now I went twice, and so in total that's 8 ceremonies. And throughout the ceremonies, altogether, I must have died at least 5 times. Okay, the first time, I'm going to be honest with you, I was actually prepared for, because I'm used to kind of throwing caution to the wind and just allowing myself to go along with the process, for whatever reason. I've done this many times on dimethyltryptamine, DMT. And, when you take DMT, you're forced to pretty much die. And in fact, you don't really have much of a choice because your ego gets ripped apart from you. And then you're thrown out into the cosmos and only to merge with source consciousness. And so when you find yourself amidst a new psychedelic such as ayahuasca, when it comes time to let go and surrender like you have done so many times before in previous psychedelics, you're kind of like, I know what stage I'm at now, and I kind of know what to do next because I've done it so many times already. The first time was at Rhythmia. I'm laying there on the bed, and I found myself having had 4 previous experiences whereby which entities were trying to channel into my body. And as they would try to channel into my body, I would start twitching and shaking. During those experiences, I left Rhythmia and I had no idea as to what was happening to me. The best that I could surmise was that my energy was just trying to release itself out of my physical anatomy. And so I left Rhythmia the first time, and then I went again. Remember, I said I went twice. And so the second time that I went to Rhythmia, my ayahuasca journey completely continued from the last time that I was at that retreat. And energy started shooting through my arm again, only this time it decided to move across my chest like this, over and over again. And then my hand came across my face, moved it around and opened my eyes as a way of looking into the room, into the surrounding environment, looking at everyone else tripping on ayahuasca. And the main psychoactive component of ayahuasca is DMT. Only in the ayahuasca brew, they often put capsaicin, I think that's how you would pronounce it. And what that does is it inhibits your ability to digest and process the dimethyltryptamine, causing, having the experience last much longer than just 15 minutes if you were to smoke dimethyltryptamine by itself. Okay, so that capsaicin allows it to really prolong. It became obvious that the entity that was channeling my body was using my eyes to see and using my hands to explore my body, my anatomy. And, after a while of figuring out the fact that it wasn't just one being that was trying to channel through my body, but it was actually 4, I was able to figure out as to which personalities belonged to who. One was more aggressive with my body because he had a hunch on his shoulder. The other one was more scientific. The other one was more observant. And the 4th one, she would put her hands into my body now and then and sometimes turn my whole body to one side. But she wasn't really the main entity that would be channeled throughout my vessel. No, that entity called himself Zach. Okay, Zach. And that wasn't his real name. He said that he couldn't tell me his real name because it would screw things up. It would have drastic consequences when it comes to Earth. He was very, well, some would say over-exaggerating, but for good reason. He told me not to tell a lot of you who he was, who they were, beings channeling throughout my body, and where they came from, because otherwise it would ruin my YouTube career and people would call me crazy for the rest of my life. But luckily I don't have to tell you who Zach really was in order to tell you why it is you might be called forth to die on plant medicine. Okay, called forth because as I'm laying there and I've built this relationship with Zach primarily, I ask Zach a very important question. I ask him, who are you? And what do you want? He says, for me to show you who I am, you're going to have to die. And I think about it for about a fraction of a second. And I say, okay, sure. Take a deep breath. I felt my body compress as the air was knocked out of my lungs, and everything went black. As everything closed in around me, I left my body and I went through the roof, into the sky, out into space. And that is when I saw Zach for the very first time. Okay. What I can tell you is that Zach and his present company was trying to figure out what a soul was. That's why they were looking at my body and examining my body. Examining my energy centers. They wanted to find out the spark, where I was in all of this and how I was able to animate my body. Animation was the important aspect of their entire experiment. And I later came to realize that they were actually experimenting on everyone in the room. They weren't cutting us up or anything like that. It was more so just energetical. Just looking into the body. Matter of fact, there was a few times when I was able to close my eyes and look down and I could see their hands inside my energy bodies, pinching off and taking out energies and moving things around, being very careful not to move something important out of place. Okay. And so I came face to face with Zach and he tells me a bunch of information about his life, what he is, what they are, and where they are in the cosmos. Okay, where they are in the cosmos. And so, why did I bring up Zach's story? Well, in order to go a little bit further, you have to completely let go. Completely. Sometimes you have to let go, knowing that you might not come back again. Right? That might very well be your last experience here on Earth. And you're not even fully on Earth at that point because you're under the influence of the medicine. And so when you completely let go of this environment, you can go really far. Not only that, but it was a very good sign of trust. It was a good sign of faith for me to completely listen to him and to let go and die. It made it very obvious that I was very serious when it came to the experience, and there was a level of admiration that I could feel from him and his present company. Furthermore, when it comes to dying on plant medicine, you might have to do it in order to remember your past lives. Okay. In the Rhythmia series on my YouTube channel, I documented my time at Rhythmia. It was like little vlogs, it's pretty cool. I talk about my past life experiences, many of them actually, and how it's like kind of counting grains of sand because there are so many. Well, within that video, I might have mentioned as well dying, but I'll mention it here again so that you guys can heed this little piece of advice. It's very important advice because it means that you go the distance again with this aspect of your ayahuasca journey. In order for me to move into my past self properly, I had to let go of this self, this idea of me. More importantly, where I went to school, my relationships, be that friends and past relationships with partners, family relationships, really things that gave me an identity, but more specifically, a reference point on earth. Elementary, preschool, high school, college, the many jobs that I had, where I traveled, where I've been on earth. All of those things that gave me a story I had to let go of. And in order to let go of it, I had to die. I had to die. And it wasn't a literal death. I just want to make that very clear. The last one that I mentioned was a literal death. This one was an ego death, which feels very much like a literal death. If anything, it feels a little bit more personal because it feels like you're the one that's going to completely disappear. When you feel like you're going to die physically, you know that there's going to be an afterlife. There's going to be something more after this. But when you feel like your personality is threatened, when you feel like your sense of self is being unmade, there's no coming back from that. And so you can have this knee-jerk reaction, this visceral reaction, where you're clawing at the walls and you don't want to leave, you don't want to go, you don't want to go deeper into the experience because you feel like you're about to die and never come back. But trust me, you'll always come back, especially when it comes to the ego death experiences on ayahuasca. With this skill, you can learn how to do it on purpose. You can have ego deaths and you can call forth specific memories of times before you were you, before you incarnated as you. About a few years later, I ended up going to another ayahuasca retreat in Orlando, Florida. This retreat was called Soul Quest, one of the best ones I've been to so far, by leaps and bounds. There's a lot of staff there. You'll always feel safe and welcome, because that's one thing you kind of want to make sure you feel at these retreats when everyone is, well, not showing the best self at all times. Most of the time they're showing their shadow self, or they're turning into certain things, they're growling, and it could be kind of intimidating. And so the ayahuasca retreat in Orlando was very, very nice. It's nice knowing that you've got like an army of attendees, volunteers that are there to help you out, just in case someone does get a little bit too close during their journey. And they're not trying to hurt you. It's just sometimes when people are going through the thick of their traumas, they're throwing their arms around, they're yelling, and it's kind of like you just don't exist. And so they did a very good job of making me feel safe at that retreat. During that retreat, I must have died at least, I lost count because at that point in time I had realized that dying is very beneficial on ayahuasca. And so whenever I found myself getting stuck or I felt like I couldn't go any further, I just decided to let go completely and act as if I was dying, which under the influence of the medicine feels like you're actually dying, and you probably are. It wasn't long after that I realized that the majority of the group actually had their death experiences, and they all came back, just like I did, and we talked about it, And so these are the reasons as to why you might have to die on ayahuasca. Either an entity's telling you to, as a show of faith, or a sign of trust, or you have to do it in order to go further into your experience, because you have to let go of who you are here, or your ego has to die. Again, similarly to what I just mentioned, in order for you to go a little further, but that's more of a personality adjustment, adjusting into your past self. And it's not just your past self within incarnations on this earth, because you might think that, of course. You have to let go of this identity, this human identity, in order to adopt another human identity. But the thing is, is sometimes you don't have human identities. Sometimes you are something else entirely. You know, you might have been a plant, you might have been a tree, you might have been something outside of this known universe. You might have been a dimensional being. Which is pretty cool because when you become that dimensional being, sometimes, or most of the time, these other yous know things that you don't know. They know how to manipulate sacred geometry, they know how to open up portals, they know how to use psychic abilities. And so when you become them completely, you remember how to do these same things. And if you can remember how to do it there, you can do it here too upon returning back to your body. Okay, so this is just some food for thought. Does it hurt to die on ayahuasca? No, it doesn't at all. It's actually quite peaceful. And it doesn't take long neither. So not to worry, don't worry about it. You'll always come back and it's pretty comfortable. My name's Ryan JC, Ryan James Cropper. If you want to talk about your ayahuasca experience, I do offer integration coaching over at ryancropper.com. Subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos like this and don't forget to hit that bell notification in order to be notified of when I next post a video. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.